This is Sister Marilee Davis.
Right.
How you came to be a sister of St. Louis, when that happened, anything about your childhood and influences on your faith and the call to be a sister?
Well, I guess let's go back to childhood. First of all, wonderful parents, wonderful mom and dad. My dad was from Montana, born on a ranch, a lot of boys. They homesteaded just out of Glacier. And my mother, people were from Virginia and Tennessee, and they moved west during the Depression, or just before. And my mom and dad met in Long Beach. My dad was in the Navy. He was 18 and my mom was 13, or maybe a little younger, at a dance. And it was a hit. And they just, they were not Catholic. And we had, 3 of us were born in San Jose, where my dad got a job with the fruit industry. Not the head, but the bottom. And we were all born there. And it's a park now, I want you to know. A state park just opened this year. And so I'm a California girl, and I'm also, you might say, a Northwestern girl. My dad was career Navy. We were very much involved in World War II. My dad was overseas all during World War II, and my mother was really a Rosie the Riveter. She worked at the naval shipyards, and she also worked at Douglas in Long Beach. So you might say we were a product of our time. I didn't meet sisters until my sister, there were 4 of us, 3 girls and a boy, and my older sister met a Catholic boy in Long Beach in junior high, and well, anyway, she worked at the Catholic hospital. And so she met Catholic sisters, and she became a cadet nurse in World War II. And then she was trained by the Catholic sisters. So that's where I met my first sisters, but I didn't really know them because I was little. But when my older sister got married, her children went to the Sisters of St. Louis at St. Cyprian's in Long Beach. And so I got to know the sisters by teaching religion. Well, in between, I helped my sister, and I became a Catholic. I stayed with them for a while. And I became a Catholic when I was 14. And my folks had the idea, you're okay to become anything you want as long as you're a good one, whatever it is. I mean, just be true to it. So I became the Catholic, and when I came back to Long Beach area, then I helped the sisters, and I was touched by their faith. But in the meantime, we were transferred to Oregon, and we lived there 4 years. And while I was there, I met a wonderful young man when I was at Marylhurst, a women's college. And we fell in love, and he went into the Air Force in the Korean War, and he got radiation, and he died of leukemia, so very suddenly. And so I was, you know, kind of at the bottom of life at that point. And I had known the sisters, and I worked again with them. And I did enter. And the reason I entered was I saw 60 and 70 in the classrooms, and I was a teacher already. I had finished my education, and I said, I can do that. I know how to do that. I can help them. And they have good faith, so I'll try that. So I tried it, but I have to admit this. From the minute I tried it to this very day, it has been a struggle. Because entering with another culture, I have always found hard. They were the majority, and we were the minority. And I found the cultural differences extremely hard.
Between Irish and
American. Food, in the beginning, you know, it was just so different, and everything was different. Language was different. All kinds of things that were just unbelievably different. So I had to really, and I still have to really check myself every day. I love the sisters. They're all good. But I get ornery sometimes because sometimes things just are different. So that's the honest truth. And I think being here, if someone hears me talking, they'll say, yeah, she's right. She is like that. So, but I honestly have given it my best shot. And God knows, He knows I've tried my best. I've heard the end of my life, and my Alan knows I've given it my best. My parents, my family, they've been so loving, but they didn't want me to be here either. Alan didn't mind. He always said, if you think you should be a sister, I'll step aside. And sometimes I say, darn it, why did you say that? God took you at your word.
So he was still with us when you entered?
No, he died before. He was 23. And he just died within 2 weeks. Oh. He just was working on all that radar, and it just completely radiated him. He touched the wrong things. And so did another boy. They were Air Force. And it just took them.
So when did he have the opportunity to tell you if you want to join? Do you mean in prayer?
We had been talking about it because I had said, you know, I thought I should enter. And he said, well, you know, if you really think it, I could step aside. And I said, oh, but he said, I don't think you should. You know, that kind of thing. He was a great guy. But so that's the real part of my life that you've heard now. And I've been teaching, I've taught over 50 years. And I loved it. I taught in El Monte for 34 years with Hispanic and children. I've loved that. I just came from there. And I'm finding this transition very hard. Being here, immobile, not able to drive, no good.
No.
Really hard.
How long have you been back here at the conference?
2.5 years. And this is hard. But I had heart surgery, and I had a few other things that kept me down, and so you have to give what God dishes out. So I'm kind of awkward the way I say things, but I'm just telling you the way it is. So I'm just at the point where I'm trying to figure it all out. But I'm not mean to people. I'm good to the people. And I love the sisters. they're still full of faith, and they put up with me like, you know, whatever, I don't know what to say, but they're so kind. But so many of my friends have died. So many of the sisters have died or returned to Ireland, and it kind of leaves you alone. It's lonely sometimes.
I can imagine. And by the way, I get really ornery myself.
Yeah, and that's the only word I know to explain it. So anyway, that's, I don't know if it sounds pretty jumbled.
It doesn't sound jumbled in the least.
And there was a part up in Oregon, and I absolutely loved Oregon. I lived there 7 years. I went to Marylhurst 2 of those years, and I went down here 2 years to Long Beach State and City College for 2. And I loved Marylhurst, had a ball. And I taught school in Portland and in the Philippines where my dad was stationed, and I taught in DC. And so I've been around the world a few times, you know, and I was 28 when I entered, and they were all 10 years younger. So I'm kind of an oddball, you know, when it comes to age, background, and I'm really not, I don't mean that I'm not a Catholic, but I'm not 100% at times. You know, they'll know a prayer and I wouldn't even have heard it. Or they'll know a song and it's like from out of the blue. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying because I was not brought up Catholic.
Yeah.
So I don't have that at my fingertips at all.
Yeah.
I'm the same.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I am.
I can imagine that it would be lonely. You're working, and then you're here, and so many of your friends have come and gone. Before we started filming, you were talking about the context of American sisters and how that's different from the Irish sisters who founded the community here. If you could tell me a little bit about, you say you're the oldest American sister here, and tell me a little bit about, you said some people have left and some people have died, and you know, so many that you've known are gone. Maybe tell me a little bit about that.
All right. I think I would have to right away mention Sister Killian Eaton. And she was the first sister of St. Louis I met. And she was so general. When I say general, I don't mean I-icer. I mean, she was kind to everyone. And she had such tremendous faith. And she had lived in England during World War II. She had been in the bombings in London, and she had taken groups of children out to the countryside. She had lived in Scotland. But she was good to everybody. It didn't matter who it was. And she was always good to me. And she knew my Alan. She knew my parents. She welcomed everybody. And I think because, you know, she was, the way she was, she had the biggest effect on me as a St. Louis. I always felt others had gone to school to the sisters, and they had a close bond with the sisters that way, which is natural and very good. It's a good way to be influenced. I was influenced by the Holy Names up in Oregon, and I love them too. But for some reason, I wasn't called to them. And then there was a Sister Raphael, and she was a farmer's girl. And she was a scullery maid in England, who the lady wouldn't let them go to, though she worked for, wouldn't let herself and her partner go to Mass. She'd make them work on Sundays so that they couldn't go. And it was when Mass was still just on Sundays. And so they couldn't go to Mass. And so then her aunt sent for her to come out to this country. And she worked in a department store, and she had the greatest respect for this country because they gave her an education. She loved this country, and I loved her for that. And we just had a wonderful bond. And she'd tell me jokes about her father and her family, and I loved that. And then there was another one. She was one of 16 or 17. And she was, again, one of these people that was kind to everyone. I love the people who could be open to all. And I admired it because I wanted to be that way. And I didn't have it yet. I still don't have it. But these were the people who have this wonderful general goodness to all, and this tremendous faith. They believed things that I couldn't understand at all. I mean, they'd pray the rosary hour after hour. I couldn't even pick up a rosary bead. I mean, for me, the rosary is something I just, it's nice. It has a nice sound. I like the rhythm, you know, but as for saying the rosary, no. So I admired that. I really did. And, you know, there were just people like that. And when Raphael was dying, I remember two of us went to see her. And the only thing I really remember was her two arms going up and locking around us, locking around pulling me down to her. And she smelled like death. She was rotting inside from leukemia and just rotting. And so, you know, you don't forget those things. You don't forget the, you know, all these people that you've worked with and who have always put you, I don't know, they always looked out for me. That's how it was. They, no matter what I did, they were always kind to me. So those are the people, and then the people who left, I've always tried to be kind to them. I've called them, or they've called me. And I try to listen to them and be good to them when they have their struggles, you know. But I would always say the shoes on the other foot, they're kinder to me than I am. But I am a good listener, believe it or not, even though my mouth is going 100 miles an hour right now.
Because I'm interviewing you, though.
Yes, yes. So, and then we had a lot of people go back to Ireland, and some of them came and said before they left, please don't think that you're being abandoned. You're still, when we go back, when I go back, I'll be praying, I'll be thinking of you. So you have that. And then, coming here, since I've been here, 3 of the closest friends have died in the room beside me. And one of them, we were allowed to be with her when she actually died. I mean, who knows how it was that we, Gladys, the nurse, and I, we just happened to be there. And I mean, out of all the sisters who go in and out, we were there. And I just said, boy, you're sure getting me ready. You know, that kind of way. But it's that room next to me, I'm not moving in there. That's where they all die. So, but it's like a preparation room or something. But
who's that, Maura?
Maura, Elizabeth McGoldrick, and Raphael, and Killian. They all died right up there.
Yeah.
And Teresa McMahon. all these people that I knew really well and I really liked.
Right, right.
Isn't that strange?
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway,
They do. No, I knew Elizabeth, and
I loved
was
Elizabeth.
so kind.
And
So
she,
kind.
you know, we were just right with her when she died.
That was Elizabeth you were with?
Yeah,
Oh, that's very fortunate.
yeah,
Maura, yeah. I only met Maura briefly,
yeah,
so, yeah.
yeah.
Well, that must be hard, and it's nice of you to stay in contact with, how many sisters left
Oh,
from your group? Or
all from my group. Oh, well,
From
there were
many.
only 10 in my group, but they all left.
from your group?
Yes,
There were 10 Americans. You were
yes.
the only one who stayed.
No, there were 2 Irish and 8 Americans. So,
Now, that must have been very hard. You watch 7 other Americans like you decide that they can't live religious life, and yet you continued. That says a lot to me. You didn't, did it make you waver in your decision to see so many of them decide to leave?
they were all younger sisters, and like you could see it was a very difficult time. There were a lot of changes, and there were a lot of people leaving at that time in other orders.
Leaving vowed life.
Yes, and these were postulants, so most of them left the first few months,
And this was 1960?
60. And the changes started in 63, really.
With the Second Vatican Council, which is something I've been talking to the sisters about, because you are literally the female bridge between pre-Vatican II Catholic Church and post-Vatican II. But to continue in religious life when the whole world is blowing up and the Catholic Church is having the Vatican Council, I just wonder how that, you might not have been thinking about the Vatican Council because people didn't know what it was, but I guess I don't really know the question, but just to speak about that time, it's a very, it must have seemed chaotic in some ways, and yet you stayed the course. I'm impressed by that.
Well, you have to realize I was loved. I already was loved. You
I mean,
know,
by your parents.
by Alan, my parents. You know, I was trained. I was very stable in my work. You know, the only place I wasn't stable was in the things going on around me.
I find what you're saying really interesting because you're bringing to light the fine differences in the population of the Sisters of St. Louis, because people think of it as the Irish population who came here. They also know some of the American sisters, like I said, Marjorie and Judy and Margaret and Catherine Collier. But what's interesting is it seems to me now we have this entire completely different culture of sisters who are blossoming in Africa, very different from the North, very different from the Irish, and very different from the Americans. And we interviewed one of them when she was visiting here. What was her name? Martha, John?
I think so.
But I don't know if you would have any feelings about the fact that the whole Irish story is winding down. The American story is a little bit younger than the Irish story. But then you have these young sisters coming from Africa. I don't even know if you've thought about it very much, but that's one of the things that inspired us to start interviewing people here in the States, because it seemed like that story was winding down as the African story was winding up. Do you have any feelings about that, or?
Yes, I think that they'll be fine. I really do, for the simple reason that even though European culture was thrust on them in the 40s when the sisters went there, and the 50s, it wasn't done on purpose. It was done on, I don't know quite how to put it, but to educate them, to teach them how to set a table, to some of these things. But the sisters' own not nationality, that their own being has come through naturally. When you meet them, they dance, they sing, they prepare their own food. They're given money to go out and get their own makings of their own food. They get down on the floor and eat with their hands. More power to them.
One thing I'm curious about, and this will be different from you, you weren't brought up Catholic and you weren't brought up in Ireland. So you came into the Catholic Church as a convert at a young age, and then you became religious. And do you have an opinion about the role of women in the Catholic Church, or just that whole topic that began to change so much in the 60s and with Vatican II and the role of women? Is there...
Yes, the men we were so top-heavy, we were hardly there. And sometimes, like you'd kill yourself working on say, getting ready for a sacrament, like First Communion or the older ones, with the older ones. Confirmation. And then along would come a priest, and he'd say, you can't do this or you can't do that. And I'd find myself saying, how come, to him? And he said, because I say so. And I'd say, well, it's going to stay this way. If you want it taken down or whatever, if it was a poster or whatever, you take it down. I'm not. I would talk back to them, and they didn't like it. So I don't have many priest friends. And it wasn't that I didn't like men, because like my mother, my mother always said, the day you didn't notice a good-looking man, you were dead, and things like that. So, it wasn't that. I like men, but sometimes they kind of lorded it over you, like you didn't know any better. So I didn't go along with some of them, and I let them know it. The way the sisters were so educated in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they sent me, probably because they thought I didn't know any religion, to get a master's in world religions, and I loved it. I loved learning about world religions. But sometimes I know the priests felt the sisters were smarter than they were. And to be honest with you, not that you really felt smarter, but you wanted to encourage the priests to feel comfortable. You wanted them to feel good about themselves. And when they would give a talk or a homily, you would want to say to them, that was a really good homily. Thanks, Father, that was really good. You never want to put anybody down. That's not what you want to do. And so there was none of that, but some of them didn't feel that way. They felt like the sisters were getting educated and that some of them were smarter. And because of that, there was kind of a backlash, a little bit of not everywhere. Most priests are just so good, and so many are very humble, and they know who they are. They know within themselves, and it comes out, that goodness. So anyway, that's about all, don't you think? Don't you think you've had enough of my...
Well, I would talk to you forever, but now his battery ran out.
Oh, Oh, see, the Lord said it's over.